almost top of the line Marantz receiver SR6015 with the Odyssey's top of the line correction system multeq-xt32 with also sub EQ for two subwoofers separately. And it's reset at default values. Everything is off, including even auto lip sync, graphic EQ. Speakers are all set to large, so there is no crossover or subwoofer effect. It's just a pure speaker. Odyssey is off, everything off. Let's first check levels. This is a UMIC2 calibrated microphone with ASIO drivers, so minimum latency, and it's at perfect reference level 75 dB. So let's measure. Here is a left speaker response detected by the UMIC mic at the central listening position. Now let's switch to reference Odyssey level with everything else off. There is no correction or anything. This is a default reset receiver at the moment. It's just a pure reference curve edit. Let's check the levels again. 78. An unexplained 3 dB boost. Well, let's ignore that for now and let's measure. Done. I need to refit the data because of the boost in the bass frequencies. Call this reference. Now, let's check the flat curve, because this is not flat enough. Check levels. Still 78, unexplained 3 dB boost, and start. No change in the bass boost here. We can't see the change in the high frequencies because of the reflections there. And call this flat. Now, what's happening here? Okay, while we are at it, let's also add some dynamic EQ that everybody loves so much to the measurement. At default values, 75 dB reference level, so its effect should be perfect. Overall level is the same, good. Wow, again out of the window, so we have to refit. This is the dynamic EQ effect to the bass. Let's call this DEQ. Now, the real measurement of the speaker at 75 dB volume. Ideally, you have to apply a frequency-dependent windowing to this measurement to see the speaker's actual response at high frequencies, which can be corrected by correction. Because if you correct this, you will try to correct for reflections, which doesn't work, shouldn't be done. And high frequencies, because of their very short wavelength, they bounce from every single thing in the room and cause these disruptions here. Frequency-dependent windowing by applying different sized windowing to the impulse response while determining the frequency response during the FFT transform just gets rid of these reflections. The windowing width in cycles for 15 is ideal for my room. That is calculated and derived from RT60, 60 dB drop in reverb time calculations. So let's apply that. Unfortunately, I applied it to the EQ. Reversing it. Okay, apply that to the original measurement, and this is the actual response of the high frequencies. The low frequencies didn't change. This is the frequency response, but do we hear this response like that? Do we hear this boost here and this dip here by around 28 dB difference? No. Our brain interprets all these frequencies in a different way. We tend to hear lower frequencies lower than they are, higher frequencies higher than they are, and this also changes by volume, so it's not even fixed. The way to take care of that is apply psychoacoustic smoothing. It does exactly this. It changes the frequency smoothing depending on our brain's perception at that frequency. This is how I'm gonna be hearing my speaker. And how should I be hearing my speaker? Ideally, we go to EQ. Calculate target level from response. Low frequency cutoff is somewhere like here. Looks like it. This would be the ideal flat frequency response, but because of the way we perceive frequencies, it needs to be bent by a certain slope. It's a fixed slope all the way from 20,000 to, it can only go to 10 Hertz here. So this is the ideal response, and this is the actual response of my speaker. There is a problematic boost in this area, especially here at 50 Hertz. And there's another even bigger boost here at 900 Hertz. The rest seems okay, in fact. And from the lowest base to the highest frequency, the total drop is around 6 dB at a straight slope. This is how the curve should be for best sounding response to human beings. Let's generate a measurement from that. And now let's see these problems that I just told about, how Odyssey's curves dealt with them. The reference curve. Odyssey applies 1/3 smoothing to that, nothing else. No frequency dependent windowing, no psychoacoustic smoothing. I applied it to the wrong curve, reference 1/3. Okay, because it added some 3 dB boost out of blue to the response, I'm gonna offset that, take it back to where it belongs. Why did it add 3 dB boost? Because Odyssey checks the volume level, SPL, sound pressure level of a frequency response that it reads at only 1000 Hertz. As you see here at 1000, the actual response and the reference response are the same at the same point, exactly around 75. Because my frequency response has a boost in 75 dB. It's a coincidental boost. It could be deep there, or it could be just flat. And because Odyssey only checks at that particular frequency and nowhere else, it adjusts the volume accordingly. So because of a peak that I have at 75, it just boosts every curve by 3 dB. The whole frequency response, according to Odyssey, the level of it is where the level is at 1000 Hertz. Whether there's a peak or dip or it's flat. Doesn't make much sense, does it? Anyway, we have to learn to live with this. This is the ideal target curve, and this is what Odyssey came up with. Apart from this 250 Hertz to 300 Hertz area, it is boosted falsely everywhere else. Well, maybe also around this 2000 Hertz area, but they also take care of that with mid-range compensation. And then suddenly it is correct at 16,000 Hertz. Then there is another unnecessary drop this time at still audible by human beings, 20,000 Hertz. Around 6 dB from ideal. Now, why is that? Because first, they can only correct up to 16,000 Hertz because the sampling frequency that they process everything inside the machine is in fact 32,000, not 48. And with 32,000 sampling rate, the highest frequency you can measure, let alone correct, is 16,000 Hertz. That's why even the graphic equalizer ends at 16,000. Trust me, Odyssey correction never goes beyond that. There is this drop in the high frequencies, which lucky ones of you can still hear. Fortunately, I can't hear beyond 16,000, so this drop doesn't bother me that much. But those boosts really bothers me. Only here at 250 to 300 Hertz, it is exactly the same as what the real response is. That's why people tend to cut the correction if they have an app of some sort at around 200, 300 Hertz. They always claim that it sounds better. This is the reason. My speaker had a boost problem here, deviating from the target curve. And Odyssey just increased that boost. There was only one place that wasn't problematic in my speaker's response, and Odyssey managed to add another 3 dB boost there, so also made it louder than it needs to be. And everywhere else. What did flat curve do? Okay, flat curve, if we applied what needs to be really applied, frequency dependent windowing, frequency dependent windowing plus psychoacoustic smoothing plus minus 3 dB offset. Ideal target, reference curve, and flat curve. So flat and reference are almost the same, except from some observed differences here and there, up to 1000 Hertz. And from there on, reference curve weirdly drops down, flat curve weirdly goes up. None of them can hit the real where they need to be, which is the straight line here. So it's either you lose this area here or you overwin this area. Why is it flat according to Odyssey? Let's revert all the changes we did to idealize this frequency response. Remove the frequency dependent windowing and remove smoothing and add 1/3 smoothing only. Remove the target curve and think about a 75 dB straight target curve like that. As you see, the flat response is right on top of it. So it's flat according to Odyssey, but it's nothing but flat. Well, dynamic EQ is a whole different story on its own. Let's apply frequency dependent windowing to see its audible real effects in real life, psychoacoustic smoothing, and the actual target curve that needs to be. Take off the frequency boost. It falsely applied because of measuring at only one point, the SPL level. When dynamic EQ is on, people like the sound because somehow this massive boost around 18.5 dB higher than it needs to be at 50 Hertz. They deal with this by lowering the volumes of their subwoofers or using mini DSP for bass management and cutting off whatever. They do something and get rid of this. Also, some people like this kind of bass, hard to understand. They ignore the high frequency boost, although they complain from that regularly everywhere. They ask Odyssey to change boost, to not apply the EQ to surround channels because they think this is coming from surrounds. It's coming from every speaker. But by the boost, actually Odyssey got something right from around 2000 Hertz, even 1000 Hertz to around 9000 Hertz. It is now on top of the ideal curve. So this part of the response is finally correct. Also this part you can say kind of correct. It corrected this part. So 3-4 false actions ended up getting something right partially at some point. Now let's go into more details about why you should always go for manual calibration. Now we have seen in this little demo that target curves those automated calibration systems are intending to correct for are not really accurate. How about the correction filters that they apply to? How accurate they are? This is multi-EQ comparison chart from the cheapest version to the best version, XT32. The finite impulse response filters, number of taps. For subwoofers, the best version of Odyssey can apply 512 taps. And here the blue line is my actual subwoofer response from 0 Hertz. Here the frequency axis to 250 Hertz, and that's the volume level, SPL. The red line is 512 taps resolution. As you can see here, number of taps, 512. So this is how accurately it can imitate the actual response of the subwoofer, let alone correct it. There is nothing it can do for this peak here, massive peak at 50 Hertz. There is not much it can do even here for this peak at 60, 70, and here it's at almost 80 Hertz. It just sees it as a straight line. And the lower the frequency, the worse it gets. And below 5 Hertz, it can't even see what the response is. These are inaudible areas, but still in the audible region, that is the maximum. Even if it got everything right, because of the filter resolution, there wasn't much it can do for correcting it. Now the measurement related problems. We mentioned incorrect smoothing and no windowing. When it takes measurements at different locations, like for XT32, 8 different locations. For Dirac, it's like 9, I think. And there is no correct time alignment of measurements for different locations. Timing is based on the first measurement point. That's it. The response deviates from reality by the distance between different measurement points. That's why people tend to keep the microphone close to the original measurement point during the other measurements to get a proper correction. Volume averaging of measurements rather than vector averaging of measurements, completely ignoring the phase cancellations. This is 3 measurements of the same speaker at 3 different measurement points at the same time, at the same volume level. As you see, because of the different location, frequency response varies quite a bit. The red, green, and blue lines are each of the 3 measurements that were taken. And here, the blue line is the volume average, dB average of these responses, which Odyssey does. It takes 8 measurements and averages them and comes up with the response as the blue line here. light blue. When you vector average these responses, which is the reality, because phases of these responses affect each other, like opposite phases cancel each other out, etc. The vector average is the purple line. For example, the 45 Hertz dip here, Odyssey gets it around 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 dB wrong. Also small variations all around the place, because it is averaging the decibels of that plain arithmetic average, not the vector average. So multiple measurements, yes, okay, it's a good thing, but time alignment of multiple measurements is wrong. It's inexistent actually. It just takes the first measurement as a time alignment reference, and averaging is wrong. Measurement-related problems continued. Inaccurate delay calculations. All the systems, the mini SPU connect, the amplifiers, internal circuits, etc., they all introduce delays, and those measurement systems, automated measurement systems, do nothing about it. Whereas in REW, for example, there is clock pulse per minute correction, which completely eliminates every delay caused by the instruments during the measurement. That's why it can never get the speaker distances right. Impulse response resolution for the same sampling frequency, 48 kHz, and for the same frequency range from 0 to 24,000 is 1/8 of what REW does. 16K versus 128K. That's the resolution of the impulse response Odyssey measures. Uncalibrated microphone, obviously, here is the red line. This is my left speaker response, measured in red with UMIC2 calibrated microphone. At the same time, at the same volume level, from the same position, the green line is measured by Odyssey microphone. Okay, quite acceptable calibration around here, although this is quite a difference, around 1 dB in the low frequencies. But at 2 kHz, there is like 2 dB difference, and then after 5,000-6,000 Hertz, look at the difference. The Odyssey is measuring this frequency like that. Maybe that's why they are trying to push high frequencies with dynamic EQ and other things, because they know the deficiency in the uncalibrated Odyssey microphone. This is quite a difference, and when you can't measure your room properly, how can you correct it? The advantages of manual calibration: full flexibility on target curves, smoothing and windowing choices, correction frequency range, versus none in automated systems or available with paid apps like multeq-x, multeq editor, and what have you. Perfect timing, because you can cross-correlate multiple point measurements with each other, then come with the perfect impulse response, and you can measure the time delay of that impulse response, so you can adjust every speaker within millimeters of accuracy for their distance to the central listening position. Volume level adjustment, as I mentioned, it only takes 1000 Hertz volume level and considers that as the volume of the speaker. Whereas in Room EQ Wizard, you can, around the central frequency that you choose, you can select how many octaves back and forth you want the two different responses leveled with each other. You can select the range from, let's say, 200 Hz to 1000 Hz, volume align two responses in this range perfectly mathematically. This range could be all the vocals, so you make sure all speakers have the same sound pressure when it comes to vocals, and that's a big advantage. That includes Atmos height speakers, by the way. We can now measure and adjust and correct all the height speakers, although it's impossible to map them from Windows or macOS. Correct room response measurement by accurate multiple position averaging and alignment. We can vector average. Choice of calibrated microphones and unlimited sweep length, number, and resolution. REW can measure 200 sweeps at a time and average them, for example, compared to 8 in multeq-32. Correction of speaker room response with optimized equalizer band adjustments. We can see the real response and we can correct it with the equalizer filters that every receiver have, and we can optimize the filters in REW by least squares method. Manual calibration disadvantages now, finally. Low volume listening is compromised because at 75 decibel volume, when you're watching a movie, everything is fine, perfectly adjusted. But when you are in low volume, because of human hearing, for example, the bass frequencies are dimmer than you start hearing them less loud. And there is no dynamic volume adjustment that you can compensate for it. But so is diraclive. I mean, diraclive, when it finally comes on Marantz and Denon in 2024, hopefully, they have already announced that they won't add Odyssey's dynamic EQ or volume to diraclive. So it will also be compromised in low volume listening. limited correction power due to non-parametric equalizer filters of current AVRs. This is another limitation. Here are, according to the power of their manual equalization, ordered all the brands. Yamaha has the only proper manual equalization. It has a 7-band parametric equalizer, including subwoofer equalizer, range from 15 Hz to 16,000 Hz, and 250 Hz for the subwoofer. Q factor bandwidth is adjustable from 0.5 to 10. Gain is adjustable from -20 to +6. You're flexible with which frequency you want to adjust and with what strength and what area it will affect. You can adjust it completely. It's a parametric equalizer rather than a graphic equalizer. Only Yamaha has that. Next comes Pioneer. It has 9 fixed bands, just like Marantz and Denon, from 63 Hz to 16,000 Hz for speakers, and 4 bands from 31 Hz to 250 Hz for subwoofer. The range is from -12 dB to +12 dB. Onkyo comes next with 9 fixed bands for speakers, -6 to +6 dB range, and 5 fixed bands for subwoofer. Marantz and Denon, 9 fixed bands, fixed Q, only 0.5 dB gain steps, like you can't increase the filter gain by 0.2 or 4 or 6. It has to be 0.5 or 1. The range is from -20 to +6, and there is no subwoofer equalization. So with Marantz and Denon, if you want to go manual, you have to either use the equalizers on your subwoofers if there is one, or use a mini DSP kind of solution, ideally, or just place your subwoofer optimally in the room by crawling method and whatnot, but it will not give you any equalization on the subwoofer. Here is the Marantz Denon 1 octave 9-band graphic equalizer. These are the frequencies, starts from 63. These are fixed, you can't change them. Q factors are fixed. It's the square root of 2, so approximately it's 1.414 for every frequency. That's an information you will not easily find anywhere. And you can only change the gain of these fixed frequencies from -20 to +6. And here is the actual setup screen of a Marantz amplifier with 63 to 16,000 graphic equalizers on the Atmos ceiling speakers. That is all about the advantages and why you should manually calibrate your home theater system. Next video will be on how to actually measure and calibrate. I will show all these optimizations of equalizer bands and how to time align the speakers perfectly and how to measure. So subscribe if you haven't. You don't want to miss that. It will be full of information that's not available anywhere else. We will also measure ceiling speakers with a very different technique.